Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Metal Mastermind. I'm your host, Ken Candelas, and today it's all about how to create a concept. Now, a concept. What even is a concept? Let's start there. When we describe what a concept is, in art, it can mean a lot of things. I like to think about this when it comes to music from a very old style of making music. We used to call it absolute music. Absolute music was typically worship music, and they called it absolute music because they felt that the music was inspired by an entity, namely the Christian God in most cases. So in Western music, absolute music meant pure music. It wasn't about necessarily anything at all in terms of a theme or anything like that. Think Johann Sebastian Bach. A lot of that stuff, very instrumental music, very intellectual music, but it also didn't necessarily have a specific meaning behind it in terms of what it was about. The other side to all of this becomes then, what about the rest of that kind of music that is about a theme or an idea, right? We call this program music. Now, program music is just basically music that is inspired by some sort of idea or concept. It could be abstract, it could be real, it could be, historic. In many ways, this is just up to the person who's creating what they choose it to be about. Now, some avenues that you might think about when it comes to creating from an idea might be something like your own past, right? Historic in this case. It could be personal to you, very personal. It might be something that is of a larger concept in general. Maybe it has something to do with a group of people, not just yourself. It could also be something that is of magnitudes bigger, like metaphysical, right? A lot of worship music can be that way in that case. But all of this comes down to what is the bare essence of your message. What do you want to say that is important for the world to hear? And how do you want to say that? Because a lot of the time, how you say it is probably the most important. So, I like to really think about my concepts as a living, breathing, sort of ethereal thing that I can always interact with. My ideas, I feel, are very much in the ether, but when I have the opportunity to sort of scribble or note what I hear on some sort of idea, like a Logic session or Pro Tools session here or there, even if it's just a little bit of a MIDI session, not even anything fancy, I always try to record those ideas in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just as simple as a voice memo. These melodic ideas or rhythmic ideas, they could be both, even if you are talented enough. You will have some sort of archive, something that you could always pull from. A very good note that I remember from a good friend, Ari Fisher, him and I, we worked on a project with another friend of ours named Sam Ferrara from Zelda Reorchestrated. It was a project that I was a part of actually when I was maybe 15 years old, and we actually came around recently in about 2023 and remade the Wind Waker album, and I played drums on the Ganondorf theme, so that was a lot of fun. But Ari actually talked to a couple of my students about this subject on how to get ideas, and one thing that he mentioned that I thought was such a brilliant way of looking for inspiration is, over the course of time, as you find music that you're very inspired by, of course, you're just listening to music just as you normally would. Take note on what kind of music it was and what feeling it gave you and what section of the song it was, and make a note of all of these things that relate to certain maybe feelings, emotions, subject matter, etc. right? And just to use those as sort of like a quick guide to accessing some inspiration for yourself. I thought that was amazing. And as you start to build a library of this kind of information, you probably might see where this could be really, really, really cool, and of really your own making. So I like that approach as well. Another approach that you might think about is maybe stepping outside of music altogether for a second and maybe exploring a different medium of art. It could be visual, it could be the written word. I certainly explored both in my own attempts for Homeric, which of course many of you guys have heard already. Homeric is basically my experiment for a multimedia concept. And by doing a multimedia concept, I was able to create a little bit more of a holistic approach to everything within that concept, because not only did I have a story that one could follow or relate to, but you also have music that can inspire the person, and it's made by the author. It's from the source, right? It's the most pure form of creating art, in my opinion. And it's what I've aspired to do for all of my life. It's one of the reasons why I even got into audio in the first place. So this is something that you might think about too, right? It's that, how long do I want my ideas to last for? There's a reason why we also love stories like the Odyssey, the Iliad, Homeric, but this idea of preservation. I remember that when I went to Italy for my honeymoon, it was a really eye-opening experience to see how old everything in Italy was, and also how much it was admired still and preserved and attended for, that the sheer amount of time for restoring the Duomo would take about 20 years. That was something that was fascinating to me, and how art should be continued to strive for the longevity of humankind. Even Brunelleschi, the architect of the Duomo, never actually got to see his creation finished. And it's just this kind of approach to creating something that's going to last so much longer than your lifetime that I feel it is so overlooked by today's music. And I think that's just because people are just impatient about this stuff. Creating a concept takes time. It really takes a lot of thought. I mean, artists literally spent their entire lives just creating their ideas. So who are we to say that our ideas got to be now or never? Just accept what it is that you can do and expand upon that as time goes on. Nobody's expecting everybody to reach the top. But you can reach your own point of success with a little bit of progress every single time you go forward. So what does that look like for you? That's one of the reasons why in Metal Mastermind we always talk about creating your own sound. It's not really anything to do with, you got to break just away from the mold. It's, we got to try better. We got to do better. We have to make sure that what we put out there is meaningful. Because if you don't really care about what you put out there, there is nothing to aspire to, really. I mean, what do we keep as our beacon of hope? These sorts of questions, I mean, they're age old, They belong in the entire lifetime of humankind. So that's one of the reasons why I think looking in some cases to the past, to stories of old that have parables and lessons. I am by all means not a very religious person, but I am religious to my faith in music and art. And I also am, a historian. I love going into history and exploring the different types of interactions between moments that mattered in history to things that help create a sort of moral compass for us, like what has worked over the course of time and where are we today and how can we be always humble in moving forward. And these concepts, they're so important to that, right? See, because that's part of it. You having a mind that can critically think for itself, that can create, that is already a rare gift. So what are you doing with that power? That's a good question. So how do we keep moving forward? How do we keep pushing the boundaries? All of these are very, very self-reflective questions. You probably don't have a direct answer from someone like me. You probably just need to answer that for yourself, but really it just takes you taking a step forward. So this is one of the things that I like to share, because when we talk about Metal Mastermind, again, is all about create your own sound, and we provide a resource for metal musicians in this case. And artists of all kinds really can use Metal Mastermind, but of course it's the spirit of metal that encompasses this mission that we have here in this company. So at metalmastermind.com, we have a really phenomenal resource for songwriters. It's called Metal Songwriters Forge. And actually, it's still on sale right now. We have quite a big announcement coming up soon, and we're going to be filling you guys in. But there's a current sale right now, and when it ends, not so sure if prices are going to come back in that same form. So we'll see. When you go and explore Metal Mastermind's resources, what you're going to find: PDFs, video walkthroughs, frames of thought, things that help jog inspiration and prevent writer's block, and how to go about approaching lyrics and things like that. So it's a really, really great way to expand what you already know, or inspire you to do something different maybe that you haven't tried before. So when we get into a concept as deep as something, let's say, like Dante's Inferno has a lot of layers to unpack. It's like a really, really thick onion, actually. It's probably thicker than most people want. And with Dante's Inferno, the beauty of Dante's, it's actually that everything always means something. Right? He writes his sentences in threes and all this stuff in his stanzas, and there's always this association to that number, mainly because 3 represents the Holy Trinity, right? It is God in this case. Now, there's also the different types of creatures that he comes across in the very beginning of his journey, which is the leopard, the wolf, and the lion. These are all instruments of the different types of layers in hell. They represent what are the incontinence sins. We also have the nether hell, where we have the city of Dis, of people who have actual intention to sin. We also have the treacherous, the wolf, the one that hunts at night, hits you from behind. These sorts of things represent the fairies that Dante takes into the Inferno. So already right there, there's so much to unpack. And as you continue to go down the allegorical ways of explaining the sins of the Inferno, really harp on how the souls experience that sin in pain, right? Whereas, for example, the lustful are swept away because they can't control their emotions, and they're always in pain from this hurricane, literally throwing bolts of rock and debris at these folks while they twist and turn into the air. So a lot of the pain that happens in Dante and all of these parables and lessons that you see, they help to also inspire in some cases. These might be on their own subjects for a song. I can already imagine a metal song using tornadoes and, lust within all of that. That sounds like an epic tune. So you can even explore some of those micro interactions between people in these stories, right? Circe from the Odyssey, the witch who turns men into pigs, the Cyclops, and, Odysseus going on this grand adventure. I mean, there's so many things that you could already pick apart in the Odyssey itself, right? So one you might, take inspiration from as a modern type of approach to creating some form of entertainment in this way would be something like Death Clock, right? Metalocalypse. That kind of music and art and is as a visual as it can get, right? It's an entire cartoon series, and you're able to experience that from an audience point of view with new stimulus, right? That visual is so important there. So that could be another avenue for you. Maybe it's the visual stimulus. Explore routes with artificial intelligence, right? See what kind of inspiration you might take from that. Because looking at a piece of art or something generated by AI might be something that you can say, hey, that's a very interesting thing. I didn't really imagine that before, but I can describe it now that I see it, right? So I think there's a lot of ways that you can take these ideas and fabricate your own narratives out of them. I think it's a lot of fun. I also think that you don't have to get crazy specific. You can keep things a little bit more vague and universal in that regard. So the more vague it might be, the more universal it could be as well. That might not be for everything, but you might attribute some sort of generality to that. And though all of this comes down to how much time are you willing to spend to developing a big, clear idea for yourself? This is something that you might think as part of your brand, right? It certainly is for me when it comes to Homeric. It's an entire original adaptation of Dante's Inferno. It's my own story inspired by. And this is something that represents so much of Homeric. So yeah, it is definitely a part of my brand. And what will be yours? What is going to be your message? Again, what do you want to say in this world? I'd love to know your thoughts. Leave a comment down below and let us know what you think it takes to make a big concept come to life. That's all for now, and always remember to create your own sound.